There's no better way for people to learn about your organization than by having your staff or volunteers or supporters representing that organization out in the community. So that's the way that we're inspiring people to be more involved and also collaborate with each other in that nonprofit world.
Hello, everyone. Today, my podcast guest is Matt from Cherry Willow and also other companies. Matt, thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about your companies.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carl. I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss the work that I'm doing at Cherry Willow. So I am the founder of two different entities. The first is Cherry Willow Apparel. We are a nonprofit apparel brand that is all about wearable advocacy. So we partner with nonprofits to add fundraising as a revenue stream and then also help as a way to distribute their message and create awareness in their community. There's no better way for people to learn about your organization than by having your staff or volunteers or supporters representing that organization out in the community. So that's the way that we're inspiring people to be more involved and also collaborate with each other in that nonprofit world. And the fundraising and marketing components are the main benefit and why our nonprofit partners choose to work with us. Then I also have Cherry Willow Technology, again, created to serve nonprofits. So Cherry Willow Apparel is actually our first client, and we wanted to solve a lot of the problems that we came across in running a
Hmm.
nonprofit. And a lot of that is disparate data systems that are not talking to each other. And so we've developed a software that allows nonprofits to focus on the great work that they do, make that work easy, leveraging AI, and then also interconnect it with the people that they serve so that there are not these broken channels of communication and that people are not falling through the cracks with some of the different nonprofits, and they're able to take advantage of all of the different services that are out there to provide for them.
That's awesome. I mean, listen, clearly you've been pretty busy, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like who is Matt? Like, where did you learn all these skills? What got you interested into the nonprofit world? And then from there, I definitely have a few questions about what you just mentioned in the intro.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, for me, it started with how I was raised. My mom was very passionate about serving others, giving without the expectation of receiving. So I was very involved in my community from a young age, not always, by my free will, but I saw the example that my mom led. And then when I got to college, I actually got in a little bit of trouble my freshman year, and I got 50 hours of community service in Chicago, where I went to school. And that was my first opportunity to really volunteer and serve the people that were experiencing homelessness. Growing
You're
up,
not, wait. I'm sorry, Matt, but you're not gonna just drop this bomb and then not let us know what you did.
What?
So to deserve 50 hours of community service. So t
Um,
tell us quickly, what was this about before we get back to it?
yeah, I mean, it was just, like typical freshman year of college things. So we were, drinking in the dorm. And yeah, it was a second offense. And so it was like a three strike policy. So they
Enough
really,
said.
yeah, they really wanted us to make sure that we didn't do that again. So, but yeah, that led me to serve. I actually served alongside Sister Jean, if you know her. I went to Loyola
Okay.
Chicago. So, she's gotten very popular when we were in March Madness and things like
Uh,
that.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then the main organization that I served most of the hours with was a homeless outreach organization, and so we
Okay.
would create like sack lunches, and we go around downtown Chicago and pass them out. And so that was my first experience really interacting with people that were experiencing homelessness, and it helped me
Hmm.
address a lot of misconceptions that I had. And then as I went throughout my professional career, I come from a
So
branding
so so
marketing.
tell us. Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but tell us more about that conception because I'm sure a lot of our listeners also have the same misconceptions that you had.
Yeah, I mean, so that's always what I encourage people to do is just go out and spend time in the community with the people that homelessness affects. Um, what you'll find is they have a really strong sense of community. They're extremely positive and grateful, and they're some of the first people to lend a helping hand, despite having not a tremendous amount of things to be necessarily grateful for. from a materialistic societal standpoint. And so what you realize is they're just people, just like you or I.
Gotcha.
And that's, I think, something that allows people experiencing homelessness to exist, is this otherizing of the individuals, where we separate them, from ourselves. And so that's, I think, a big problem in society as a whole.
Gotcha. No, thank you. So yes, going back to the flow of your story here, you did this during college that really helped you clear out some of these misconceptions that you had about homeless people. And then yes, please go on.
Yeah, and then I had kids at a really young age. So a few weeks before I graduated college, I found out that I was going to be a dad. And so then that was a big shift in my life as well, and
Hmm.
priorities. So I focused on providing for them, which I found a career in sales. And particularly, I was focused on marketing and branding in the automotive space,
Hmm.
bringing them through the entire customer journey, from how they get connected to the dealership, what that experience looks like in the dealership, and how they ensure they continue to come back. As I moved throughout my career, and due to some experiences with loved ones that had mental health challenges, I really wanted to find a way to apply the skills that I'd learned towards something that was more impactful, and helpful to
Hmm.
others. And so then I took a leap and worked for a couple of different startups. And then I was actually ultimately laid off from a startup, which is what prompted me to start my own organizations.
Awesome. I mean, listen, what do you mean, something more impactful? Selling cars, is that selling, Lamborghinis and Maseratis are not is not good enough?
I was never a car guy, so I mean, more power to you if you are. But for me,
No.
I wanted to be involved more in actually serving the community in a direct way. And I do think that local business is a very important part of serving a community, and a lot of dealerships are great examples of that. And it's just more and more went towards national organizations. And so that was how I initially stepped back, as I went and worked for small businesses, locally owned businesses. And
Yeah.
that's how I found a lot of my entrepreneurial mindset actually was similar to a lot of the clients I was serving. And so I was
No. I
introduced
mean,
to this
listen.
community of people that were like me, which was cool.
No, 100%, and that was t complete sarcasm by me. Obviously, like yes, I think most of us need cars. Some of us like cars more than others, but no, 100%, being able to leverage your skills that you built while creating that customer funnel for the car dealerships, hats off to you. So now that being said, you said you leverage that experience to create now, leverage that experience, work for a few startups to then creating your companies. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into Cherry Willow. Both companies have very similar names, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, so it's Cherry Willow
Okay,
Apparel, and then cherrywillow.ai. So Cherry Willow Technology. But yeah,
gotcha.
both serve nonprofits in that nonprofit space.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. So tell me more about this because obviously, I think this is a term that we hear all the time. Nonprofits and they're for different areas. So, for example, yourself, Cherry Willow Apparel is focusing on helping homeless people, correct? So we understand how you came about with this idea based on your background at a very young age, then your experience in your punishment, should I say, in college, getting you to interact with the homeless people, and now this. So we understand the reasoning behind the startup, but tell us more about it. So how do you really help these homeless people? Yes, I remember reading on your website that a percentage of your proceeds goes to the homeless people, but what else are you doing besides that?
Yeah, so I think really the biggest part of the work is changing how people who are experiencing homelessness are viewed. So there's been a large push from certain media outlets and around criminalization, where
Hmm.
people experiencing homelessness are all try to painted with a broad brush, that they're all battling addiction, they're all battling mental health issues. And while that may be true for a portion of the people experiencing homelessness, it's not isolated to that segment of the population. Mental health is an issue that's prevalent across all parts of society, all different income levels, as is addiction. And the only reason that you see the people experiencing homelessness is they don't have anywhere to go. They are out on the street, and there's also a large percentage of the people that are homeless that don't have those issues. And if you look at the data, 40 to 60% of people that are homeless actually work, and they just go back to the shelter or they go back to a tent after they work. So it comes down to it being a narrative change that's necessary, and how society views a solution. Criminalization is actually a much more expensive to the taxpayer, and it's obviously a much less humane approach. And unfortunately, with some of the funding cuts that are coming with the recent passing of the Big Beautiful Bill, and the executive order that this administration recently issued, there's going to be an even higher number of people experiencing homelessness. I was at my shelter on Sunday. They also, in addition to running the shelter, provide rent assistance for about 100 different apartments in my community alone that have lost funding. So now when those leases come up, there's potentially 100 families, 2, 3, 400 people in a small community that are going to be experiencing homelessness. And that's not going to be isolated here. That's going to be communities across the country whose shelters are already at capacity. So I think the crisis is only going to get bigger, and that's kind of the work that we do by Wearable Advocacy, helping people to better understand not only the realities that these people face, but also the solutions.
Understood. So, I mean, what? I mean, listen, this is extremely unfortunate that, a situation that we thought was already bad is about to get worse. So, how does Cherry Willow Technology, how do you guys come in to help? You mentioned raising awareness, but tell me more about that.
Yeah, so Cherry Willow Apparel, I recently finished a bike ride from Sacramento to San Diego, where we partnered
Nice.
with 7 different nonprofits, and we're creating a documentary about that. So, a lot of our work comes about education, and so we have as many different angles to provide that education as possible. Through our apparel, where we focus on the empathy, where we focus on humanizing the people experiencing homelessness, and then through our social media and also this documentary to allow people a more in-depth look into the people that homelessness affects, and hopefully to provide a more empathetic lens so that we can get the policy change that's necessary to fix it, and not again have the criminalization be the main approach.
Gotcha. So is the goal for Cherry Willow to raise capital or to try to implement that policy or both?
So the goal for the apparel organization is to be able to platform nonprofits and help get their messages spread as widely as possible. So that's how we do through the partnership model, to get these apparel as a fundraising tool so nonprofits can continue to operate and diversify their revenue streams, but then also to get their messaging out in the community. On the apparel side, that's where we feel like we can make the largest impact, is by providing support for some of these existing organizations, and adding apparel into their fundraising and marketing strategy. Communications is really, at the end of the day, the nonprofit side, where we can make a difference. On the technology side, we wanted to figure out how to streamline operations. Most of the nonprofits we work with have 6 to 12 different disparate software systems. Some in the homelessness space, they're isolated by a continuum of care, and so there's a lot of restrictions around data, what can be used, how it can be shared. And so we wanted to, again, streamline that. So we created a system for people to bolt onto their existing systems, and then we can very easily replace some of the functionality. So they have more of a centralized resource to handle operations with some of that AI built in, so we can make sure that the burden of use, a burden of documentation, are limited, and that these nonprofits that we're partnering with can really focus on just the direct services and not have to have cumbersome software that they're dealing with.
Okay. So a couple questions here. I think number one is about nonprofits. I think a lot of us here, including myself, we hear the term nonprofits all the time. So from somebody who's created your own, who's definitely done quite a bit of work in that space. Tell us more about, like, how do you guys stay afloat? So obviously you guys are a not-for-profit organization, but obviously you need money to keep the lights on. So tell us more about that part.
Yeah, so I mean, Cherry Willow Apparel has been operating as a social enterprise So the main source of our funds come through apparel sales and the e-commerce platform. But nonprofits in general are typically funded through three different outlets. One being grants. There are a large percentage of nonprofits that rely exclusively on grants for their funding. Then two would be direct donors, so more of your grassroots or larger philanthropic donors. And the third would be more of the business corporate sponsorships. So those are the three main fundraising tools for most nonprofits. And one of the things that we try to address is there's a huge emphasis on percentage of funds raised that go direct to services. That's how a lot of nonprofits are graded right now. And again, we're trying to change people's perception on the ways that it's best for nonprofits to operate. So, with the funds that these nonprofits are able to secure, if they're able to invest a portion of those into growth, whether that be staff, whether that be marketing, whatever that be, better software that allows them to operate, then they're actually able to make amplified impact versus focusing on direct services. There's kind of a lack of trust that it comes with these nonprofits. So we're trying to advocate for people that are supporting nonprofits to allow those organizations to operate in a way that's scalable so that they can scale their impact and operate more like a business or a startup versus having to focus exclusively on percentage of funds that go directly to services.
Gotcha. And that makes a lot of sense. So, for a quick recap here for our listeners. So, let's say, for example, you're a nonprofit, and you get a donation from, you get a grant. So, you're saying that instead of taking that money, for example, and just, paying shelter for just 10 homeless people. Instead, you're taking these funds and making internal investments that could potentially help you guys more with productivity, which would in terms help you help more homeless individuals versus the 10 that you're going to help just by taking that money and funneling through to them. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, perfect. So I mean, and what's one of the and you mentioned something about a grade as well. So all the nonprofits are graded by who?
So there's different metrics out there for where people look to verify like nonprofits. Off the top of my head, I don't know the largest organization, but it essentially
Gotcha.
comes back to trust, where
Hmm.
businesses, you can create a business that provides no value. Like for me, a payday loan comes to mind. Like you can spin that up. It provides no value to anyone. It really just helps ensure people that they stay in these negative cycles of debt, and that's fine. But where you try to create something that's actually able to help people, now you have all these other burdens and hoops to jump through, and people, they want to know that when they're supporting you that it's going to help someone. And so like
Hmm.
Dan Pelota actually did a really good TED talk on this, where he talks about the way we approach charity is dead wrong. But like, so for earlier example, if we have $10,000 that's donated to us and they expect 95% of that to go directly to helping 10 people experiencing homelessness, that's great. But now, that's all that we were able to do with that versus if we take 50% and we invest it in marketing. So now our message, instead of going out to 100 people in our community, now we're able to reach 1,000 people. And now from that
Hmm.
$10,000, that 5,000 we reinvested in growth, we were actually able to get connected with people that brought in an additional $90,000. So now you're looking at that initial $10,000 investment, which would have gone exclusively towards services. We were able to take 5,000 of that and generate another 90,000. So now we 10x our impact on the people that we're serving. And so that's again the kind of mindset and the approach that we try to work with our nonprofit partners on to help them maximize the impact that they can have at the end of the day on the people that they are existing to serve.
No, that's awesome. I mean, listen, that makes a lot of sense. And to be honest with you, I can see how nonprofits can get a bad rep if they don't take, like, to your point, a 90% or 95% of what they receive and allocate it to the people in need that they're serving. But to your point, like, we're talking about productivity here. So if you
Right.
can increase productivity, ultimately you guys are able to help more people. So speaking of productivity, obviously you mentioned, Cherry Willow for Cherry Willow Tech. So obviously AI is AI has been playing and will keep playing an increasing role in helping people with their productivity. So tell me about, one of the biggest challenges you guys had before AI when it came to the administration side of things and how AI was able to help you overcome that.
Yeah, so I mean, again, for us, like just data entry, when you have multiple different systems, whether you're doing prospecting and you're trying to reach new clients, new partners, to where they enter the deal flow, you're having three, four different systems that you're having to monitor and track and manually update information, and so that takes away time from just
Hmm.
having meetings set and actually talking to people that are interested in working and supporting you. And it also takes away from time speaking with people who are experiencing homelessness to understand their needs, understand where they are struggling, which is what the technology also allows us to do, is leveraging AI to have a centralized resource for people experiencing homelessness to be able to get connected with these nonprofit service providers. Because right now, it's very challenging just to know even what services are available for you in your area. There's no like centralized resource where you can easily get in touch with all of these different organizations. So that's a part of what we're using AI to build. It's
Gotcha.
just a very easily navigable, on a smartphone menu for if you need food. These are the options in your area. These are when they're open. If you need shelter, these are the shelters. These are the burdens to enter the shelter. If you need to be sober, things of that nature. Healthcare, transportation,
Oh,
all of those things are going to be in our platform.
that's awesome. So that's going to be a platform um, designed for those in need.
Correct.
Now, question to you is, how do you expect these people, especially if you're homeless, do most homeless people have a phone? Like, how do you expect them to access these platforms?
Yeah, so most people that are homeless do have cell phones. There's also a way to get a free phone through the government in most instances. And then
Okay.
also, like, libraries are typically places where people that are experiencing homelessness will also gather. So the goal for us was for them to meet them where they are with the phone, have an app that's easily navigable. It also will be built on AI, so it's all voice search ready. So, if
Hmm.
they're not very skilled at typing, we reduce that burden, so they can just talk and actually get feedback from, feel like someone is listening to them. Because at the end of the day, that's most of the time what people who are experiencing homelessness, they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen. So that's the experience that we are working to create. And then as long as they
Yeah.
can have an internet connection, they know that they can get in touch with all of the people that are existing to serve them. The goal is to kind of lower the barriers of entry and enable them to make their own path towards progress, not necessarily have to go down pre-prescribed paths of some of these other organizations.
That's awesome. So that's one side of the spectrum. So the people in need. The other side that came to mind was the people who want to help, the people who want to give. So would your app also allow the more fortunate people to use your platform and be able to determine, okay, well, I have some clothes that I want to donate. Where do I go? I have some extra food I would like to donate. Where do I go? Because right now, to be honest with you, speaking as, as somebody who has experienced this, sometimes when you have a closet cleanup or you're moving, and you have stuff you want to give away. Yes, the name that comes to mind is Goodwill, but
Right.
obviously it's pretty basic. So are you guys going to implement something for the other side?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the technology is three faceted. So one part being the people needing the services. The second part is for the volunteers or donors. So they can get connected with opportunities. And also, we're allowing for the nonprofits to kind of create a grading system for where they need help. So if, for example, they need just fiscal sponsors, they can rank that higher, and then we kind of gamified it where people that are supporting, they can share how they supported, and they can actually see the impact that they made on these organizations. And so there will also be other newer opportunities to, if, for example, like you just said, if you were moving and you have a lot of clothes, maybe instead of going to a Goodwill, which is then going to get sold in their retail store, you can donate directly to a shelter. Or if you have suits, maybe there's a job program where they need people that have professional clothes. So all of that will exist within the volunteer donor portion of the app. And then the third portion is really the administrative arm. So, focusing on providing operations and creating efficiencies for the nonprofits. And then we use the apparel side to build up those partnerships. So, we can help people get connected to the software, through Apparel. And then also tie in the Apparel with the leaderboard. So if nonprofits want to create an exclusive item that you can only get by volunteering or donating, then you have some of that exclusivity. And that's just another cool way for people to feel proud about their contributions to a nonprofit that they want to support. And then share that out on social media to get other people involved.
Listen, man, that's awesome. Like, it's a great use of technology of AI to really just become more efficient, more productive to help those in needs. So, I mean, Matt, thank you for sharing all this insight. I think the last question that I have for you before we wrap up is, besides, so what's next? Obviously, you're creating this three-faceted app, but is there anything else in the works right now for Cherry Willow that you would like our listeners to know about?
Yeah, so really the last phase for us is actually housing. So, we don't see an end to homelessness without the creation of more affordable housing. So, once we've helped educate the community on the solutions to homelessness, why providing housing is not actually only more humane, but also more economical, and how it benefits not only the people that are receiving the housing, but more importantly, in a lot of instances, is how it benefits the people in that community. That's the not in my backyard community, where they want to see, we don't want to see people that are homeless, but we don't want them in our community. So it's like, how do we help address their misconceptions? And once we do that, then we can partner with affordable housing developers. Costco has actually done a lot recently where they're building a portion of their units with dedicated to affordable housing, or if it's voucher programs. So kind of working with municipalities to determine what is the best way that we can affect change and create more housing in that community. That's the final phase of Cherry Willow, and how we can really empower all the nonprofits we're partnered with to make a difference, and then ultimately get as many people off of the streets and into housing as possible.
Well, Matt, listen, on behalf of all of our listeners and myself as well, thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing for this community. And I'm looking forward to having you back on this podcast in a few months and see where you guys are at.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about the work. And just one final thought for me is just, if you come across someone that's experiencing homelessness, just take a moment and introduce yourself. Ask them their name. That's something that they don't often hear, and that's something that doesn't require anything other than a little bit of thought to do. So these are people that are in your community, so we can help them.
No, thank you. That's great advice. Really appreciate your time, Matt. And again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Carl. Appreciate it.